Thank you for joining us this morning to continue our academic agenda for today as part of the Engineering Education International Meeting ACOFI 2020. I'm being part of this panel discussion, internships, COPS experiences, student outcomes, and their assessment. So, as Luis Alberto said, my name is Humberto Gomez, Associate Professor of the Mechanical Engineering Department at Universidad del Norte. And I have the great honor to host our special guests and panelists today, Patsy Bracken from Rose Hulman and Mary Casarda from Virginia Tech. Hello, Patsy. Hello, Mary. Good morning, and thank you for being with us today. Okay, it's always a good opportunity, always a good thing to see you again and continue our discussions like we have in the past and during our ASME sessions. So today we're going to discuss about experiential learning. Right? So just to provide some context to our audience, this experiential learning that might be considered as internships or COPS are mainly what we know as professional practices. I mean, working opportunities for our students, right? And during these opportunities for them, they are being able to develop or maybe introduce some student learning outcomes that we have been interested as a program to be part of them or part of this toolbox that we are committed for them to attain after graduation, right? So what we want to discuss today is the relationship between these student outcomes and the possibility of doing some assessment of them, right? Having the chance to also continue with this commitment that we have in evaluating the results of our assessment process as an input for our continuous improvement processes in our programs, in our department. So, hello, Betsy. Hello, Mary. So from my introduction, I just want to, hola, good morning, buenos dias. So from my introduction and just being aligned with the context that I have been providing to the audience, internships, COPS, or experiential opportunities, they might be mandatory in the curriculum, they might be optional. I mean, it varies, it depends of the interest of the program in providing or giving credit out of that experience. But independently, nowadays, we have seen a tremendous interest of students, of programs in adopting or transforming these experiential experiences for our students. We see, for example, numbers in programs where these experiences are not mandatory. We see numbers like 75%, 80% of the students take part of these experiences, even though it implies having a one semester delay in the original path, right? So mostly the students we have having a very academic standing, they also like and love to be part of this. So let me start this conversation in terms of what you consider is the real and the add value of these experiences in the curriculum, and especially let's start with the students, Patsy. But just from the point of view of the students.
So I think from the point of view of the students, we probably have two types of students. One type of student is a student that's very academic. They love modeling, they love math, and they think that everything can be predicted to the most minute detail. So they think you can determine what the stress in an object is out to 7 significant digits. And so for those students, what they are learning is that in industry, they have great predictive models, but they're not absolute. So you have to know how to combine these models with actual experience, with what actually is happening. One example I have actually is from my own experience. I was doing some consulting work and a company wanted me to predict when something was going to break. And so I did the calculations and came up with the load that would probably cause it to fail. So then I thought, you know, I want to check this out. So I actually got a sample and we loaded it on a tensile test machine. And I found out it would hold a lot more weight than I had predicted. And so I got to thinking, I was like, wait, why did that happen? And then I realized the typical equations that you use are worst case, and then material properties can value by as much as 10 or 20%. And I was able to figure that out because I had experience. But students working is what helps them figure that out. It gives them that experience. And then on the other hand, we have some students who are afraid of their ability to do models, and they're afraid they'll never understand models or predictions. And so I feel like for those students, this experience is really good because they see how companies use those models to direct those work. So I guess maybe the best high-level description would be the best thing that you get is you are combining theory with practice, and you see how those interleave. Mary, what do you think? What do you want to add to that?
Well, I really like how you explained that, Patsy. I think those were great. It's a great way you put that, you explained that. And I would just sort of summarize that by saying it gives students context for their work and also perspective. So it is, engineering is abstract when you're just getting it in school in a lot of ways. And to be able to see it applied and to see those, oh yeah, the material properties could vary 20% or whatever your case, whatever the case may be. I think that really grounds them in giving them an opportunity to better understand their classes when they come back and how to look at problems and solve problems. So those are the only things I would add, is that nice context and perspective.
Yeah, Mary, and taking that context and perspective as an add value for the program per se, we will say that these experiences might also have a big impact and a really big add value to the curriculum of the programs. I mean, what has been your experience in terms of adding value to the program now, from the point of view of the curriculum?
Well, in all honesty, I think in a lot of programs, there's still a disconnect. So I think there's an opportunity to tie it in better. And I've been working with some colleagues in our business school at Virginia Tech, and they do this on a more regular basis where I'll call it packaging around an internship or co-op. And the student has to plan, they have to go in, interact with the faculty before they start their internship. And they actually, in this case that I'm thinking of, the students have to come up with their learning objectives and learning outcomes and periodically check in with how they're achieving those, some additional, but not onerous, I would say, but meaningful assignments during that where they check in with the faculty. And if there's an opportunity where, say, the company, the employer, can work with the faculty and do a little bit of planning and check in, and particularly feedback on how the student's doing, I think that's a really, really rich opportunity. And so it's got to be it's kind of customizable, but it's not onerous for the faculty either, because you're just setting things up and helping students setting things up and working with their employer. But Patsy, I think you may have more experience with this in engineering.
So, thank you, Mary, because we have a new program at Rose-Hulman called Engineering Design. And as part of that, students are required to do either 4 internships or 2 co-ops. And I don't know if they're described the same way in South America as they are in the US, but an internship is usually shorter, about 3 months, and a co-op is longer, about 6 months. And so that's where we use those words. So our students are required to take a class while they are actually doing their work. And it's an online class because they could be anywhere in the world working. And then the online class makes connections to what they are doing at work. So right now I am teaching one of them, and it's a course on creative design. So what I have the students do is pick a problem that they're working on, and then I require them to use one of the techniques that we are talking about in the class to generate So sometimes I make them generate 50 ideas. I usually start out with shorter number, like maybe 10 different ideas of ways that they could solve that problem. Another thing we do is we look at how the problem is framed and say, so what if the constraints change just a little bit? And so in my area, I can see how to apply it to what they're doing at work. And each one of the faculty who teach these classes, they have to have the ability to see how to apply it to what students are doing. So there's a faculty that teaches systems engineering, and what that faculty member does is has the students make systems engineering models of a product of the company where they're working. So they can tie that information into what they're actually doing. And the students seem to like it.
Yeah, so definitely. And using that connection between the program and the industry, it might develop or triggers new relationships between the institution and the industry. I know, for example, Mary, that you have been very involved in terms of scholarships, for example, and supporting different activities for the students. So how do you think that this is really impacting the relationships between institutions and industry? Some of them might be at this moment just transactional. At some point, it might be a really big, important partnership. What's your point of view on that?
Well, I think that's an excellent point you bring up. And you know, historically, we've had some nice industry academic connections through our senior design class. And often we have industry sponsored projects. These are smaller projects, year long. But it's a nice win-win in that context because industry learns about our research, they learn about our students, they get a chance to work with a faculty, they get a chance to work with with students. And so I think that same opportunity, you can really leverage that and take it up in a very large way. I'd say take it up a notch, but several notches, by really creating this partnership, more of a partnership in a way, by having a specific student, a specific company with a specific projects. And so I think that's, a little more intimate even than the senior design, which I think the senior design partnership is excellent. So I think it does. I totally agree. I think that's an excellent question, that it's an opportunity to really strengthen in a meaningful way those relationships. And Patsy, what are your comments on that?
Okay, so I come at it from two different ways, and I agree with everything that both of you have said. It's essential. So when I'm talking to students, I say, for your first internship, is there a company that's your dream company to work with, that you want to go to work for when you graduate? If so, try to get your internship with that company. And then while you're at that company, try to establish additional relationships. So perhaps suggest to them, hey, I see we're doing this in this area. It might be a good project for you to do with Rose Holman, and particularly also capstone design. I say, look around and see, is there a project at your company that they want to work on that they just don't have the resources to right now, that might be a good project for you to do for capstone. And so I ask the students while they're out to be looking for opportunities for them to create those ties with the company. And so then when I talk to the company, I say, hey, you've got this student as an internship. This is a great way to identify potential employees. So you have them for either 3 months or 6 months, and you get to know them. And if you don't want them back again, there's no harm. I mean, there's nothing that you have to lose. However, if they're really good students and you want them back, here's some things you can do. You can tell them you're always welcome back. You can give them their second co-op so that when they graduate, they will have a year's experience working for you. You can give them capstone projects and they get to work. Again, not only do you have that year's experience working for you, you get an additional year while they're working on their capstone project. What about a scholarship? Perhaps you want to give that student a scholarship. Or something that we have found companies really love to do, they like to give us equipment. So they like for the students to be using their equipment. And like, we're happy to use equipment. We're happy to receive good free equipment. So there are lots of opportunities for building the relationship. And I think there's advantages from the student's point of view, and there's also advantages from the company's point of view. And we have found it easiest to start those relationships with alums that we have at different companies. So that's another thing you might try. If you're wanting to get a relationship with a company, see if you have any alums at that company, talk to them. And even if they can't help you, they know the ropes of the company and they can say, this is the person you need to talk to, and this is how you need to approach that person. So that's all I have.
Excellent. Well, I was just gonna take both of your points and interventions in the sense like, okay, so we have students working in companies. We are combining models, you know, extending models from the program to the industry. And probably we are also connecting classes with practical work or an experiential experience for our students. So it's like having two different environments at this point. But you think in terms of student outcomes, do you think it is possible to have, instead of two different environments, one single ecosystem in terms to provide support for the student outcomes or the student learning outcomes that we are committed in our program? And let's start with you, Betsy.
So, absolutely. I think you can have, you can be strategic about the things that you want to demonstrate and where you're going to demonstrate them. So I think from my standpoint and my experience with ABET, what I see some programs do is try to demonstrate every single student outcome in every single course. And they just end up having a nervous breakdown. So what we want to do is think about what are the outcomes that we want to demonstrate in these experiential practices that the students are encountering, and then how are we going to demonstrate them? So as an example, one of the great things are professional ethics. And we ask the students to write about an ethical situation that they encountered at their workplace, or how they applied the ethics of their profession in the workplace. So if, for example, ASME, one of their big things is hold paramount the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So we would ask the students, tell us at your workplace, what do they do? How do they fulfill this ASME code of ethics? And so then the students will write their explanation, and then we can use a rubric and evaluate it. And we have demonstrable evidence that we can then show to any accrediting agency. So I think you are absolutely right. The ecosystem can be combined. And I think just don't kill yourself when you go to combine it. And so, Mary, I know I come from a small institution, so we would have a tendency maybe to do a little more because we're small and there are not that many students. But Mary comes from a very large institution, and I assume a lot of your institutions are very large. So Mary, what specific recommendations or bits of advice do you have for large institutions?
Well, Patsy, I just want to second exactly what you said, that, you know, solid assessment does not have to be overwhelming. It does not have to be in every class. And so we're very strategic. We're very committed to assessing our outcomes. Are our students achieving the outcomes that we've designated for them, the ABET outcomes primarily? And you know, it's just about meaningful selections. You know, in terms of the internship piece that we're talking about, or co-op piece, experiential learning, I think this is a good opportunity for assessment of the criterion 3, number 7. that new knowledge. So that's one that I've struggled with, that programs have struggled with. And now you have a student stepping into a whole new environment. Is there a way for that student to, how did you learn about your company? You know, what things did you have to learn and how did you do that? How did you know that was right? So I think there's some amazing opportunities that might be actually easier to assess in an experiential. And I love your example of the design piece about health, safety, and welfare of the public. I think that's also really gives them a nice context that this is real. This is not something that we're just making up. This is actually very important, and this is how companies do it. So I think there are opportunities there. In terms of assessment overall for a big program, we target certain classes to assess certain things in, and we look to rubrics are key, meaningful rubrics. And we have GTA help. So we train GTAs to grade some assignments. And so if I had 400 students doing experiential learning, I might have that kind of assignment of what did you have to learn to do what, and to train GTAs on how to evaluate that, give them meaningful rubrics to grade that. So in some cases we do multiple choice or surveys, but we really try to give a little more meaningful in terms of some written feedback from students, for example, or grading something like a portfolio. And luckily we do have the GTAs, but it's really important to train the GTAs on how to do this well and to calibrate. We may have lost our host.
So while he's gone,
okay.
I wanted to add something to what you just said. Oh, you're back. Okay. Can I add something to what Mary just said? I was just thinking about, she was talking about how the business school had students put down their learning objectives for their co-op. Maybe that's something we could do to use for that number 7. So you say, okay, identify what you want to learn in this experience. Tell us how you're going to learn it. And then when they come back, they prove that it worked out, that you did it. That could be really cool. I love that, Mary.
All right. So I think that from your points of view, we can definitely say that it's possible to do a curricular map, a sustainable curricular map in terms of having our outcomes and extending their assessment from the curriculum in our program to the company, right? I think that could be one of the conclusions that we have. But let's try to pick 2 outcomes. Let's try to pick 2 outcomes and have maybe share with the audience your experience in terms of how to link the approach of the program to assess this outcome and how it could be assessed during experiential experience. Let's say, for example, one that I know that you will love, design. Let's start off of an outcome related to design. We can start with you, Patsy.
Okay, so an outcome related to design. I know that I think, so design has several phases. And so when you're looking at experiential learning and a student working for a company, the company may not let the student actually do design, right? Because sometimes it's really, you need some experience in order to do it. And so a person that's still a student might not do the design, but they actually can be very involved in parts of the design process. So what I would ask a student to do is to identify what part of the design process that their work pertains to, and then document how that work pertains to the design process. So one of the things that US companies a lot of times let students do is do testing. And so ask the student, so how does this testing and validation apply to the design process? How does it apply to the risks that a company has when it puts out a product? When something fails in testing, why did it fail? Was there a design problem? Is there a material problem? Is there a manufacturing problem? So I think you can use that experience to document what students are learning about the design process. And then you can use your capstone design as evidence that they've gone through the entire process, and you can use their work experience to go really in depth in one area of the process. Mary, what do you want to add to that?
Yeah, Patsy, I think that was a great answer. And I would add that it kind of comes back to that context, you know, so students understand if students step into an internship and, all right, we need you to do these tensile tests for all these pieces. Well, to understand why are they doing it and where does that fit into the company or the goal of that project, the company's project, and where in the design process are they with that, you know, and it's going to be at different points depending on, you know, is it still prototyping, or is it we need to redesign something, and where are they in the steps of concept generation or whatever. I'm kind of just being a little vague, but I think the whole context thing and making them actually figure out where they are in that process, just like Patsy said, I think that's really meaningful. And then we do most of our design assessment in our capstone senior design. So the students come back richer, they come back in richer knowledge, they come back, well, richer too if they've been getting paid. And, but they can kind of guide the team and have a perspective on, you know, how the process works in the real world.
Right. And Mary, I remember that you also mentioned the opportunity to develop new knowledge, right? So we also have been exposed in an environment when they can also have the chance to, you know, receive or develop, or learn, or have the opportunity to apply new knowledge. And I also know that, for example, in Virginia Tech, you have your colleagues also working in terms of leadership that can be also be part of the experiential learning. So would you like to give us some examples out of that?
Well, I can give you the new knowledge examples, and that is we often we do a lot of that in our lab courses where students have to investigate, you know, the instrumentation. Instead of just handing them, here's all the specs, here's how this works, that they have to determine that on their own, including going out to the internet, including making sure they have the right instrumentation and setting up the experiment correctly. So we've shifted some, and you could almost call that, well, design of experiments to some extent, but really it's they have to figure out what they're supposed to do and what their instrument is and the limits and capabilities. So that's one example of where we do learning new knowledge or gaining new knowledge in an appropriate way. In terms of the leadership piece, you know, that's in our business school, and we haven't incorporated it so much yet into our engineering. And I think there's a real opportunity to do this. The thing that always impresses me with students, if you give them expectations, they rise to the occasion. And I think being clear that we really expect them to be leaders in their field, to be leaders in the community, citizen scholars, I think that's the next horizon that I'd like to work towards is, you know, our engineering students get too caught up in the technical, the science, and that's wonderful. We need that. But I think to have them also the perspective that their voices need to be heard, whether it's policy or governance at the university level or, you know, in the U.S., a state level or even national. I think engineers aren't encouraged enough that their voice is important, and how to do that. What are the entry points to being a leader in the community as well as in a company? What are the kind of things you need to know to step into leadership, to have that perspective? And in the experiential learning case, what is the structure, leadership structure of your company? How does that operate? You know, that knowledge, and ask them how might you pursue that track if you wanted to? What are some things you could do? So those are just some thoughts, and you know, I wish we were a little further ahead on the leadership piece, but we're thinking about it and we're looking for opportunities for that.
Right, and we were having also a conversation before starting the Patsy, also the way that you, in addition to technical student outcomes, you have also have the opportunity, for example, in your design studios to have the chance to work with additional student learning outcomes through different opportunities for the students. So that might be, Patsy, also connected in the same fashion that we have been discussing for the industry, combining technicals and professional outcomes at the same time.
Absolutely. And so one of the things, one of the things we do in the studio that we try to prepare them for as they go into their internships is taking initiative and being a good team member, because that's the very first part of leadership. So simple things like, you need to come to class on time. You need to come to class every day. You need to follow all of the safety guidelines. And so sometimes students may not want to do the safety procedures. I will tell you, in industry in the US, if you don't follow a safety procedure, you can be fired on the spot. And so there's no like second chance. Although we do give second chances in the studios because they're still students, but really important things like, you know, if it requires safety glasses, you need those safety glasses. If it requires closed-toed shoes, you need to follow that. If it requires a grinding shield, you need to use that grinding shield. So first off, making them be aware of expected behaviors. The other thing is when you are in a team meeting, you need to give your undivided attention to the team. Do not be holding up your cell phone and typing on it at work or in an interview situation, or things that we would never do, sometimes our students do. So you actually have to talk about those things. Then the next level, once you get that floor level, is look around and see how can you add value. What can you do to help your team improve? And what can you do to help the company improve? So if you see something and you have an idea, you want to present it to a company, but you want to present it in a way so that they'll hear it. And so sometimes we have some young students who have a tendency to say, you're not doing it the right way. You should do it this way. And in general, that doesn't make people happy. So what you want to do is say, wow, you know, I noticed that this is the procedure that you use. And I'm just wondering, why is there a reason you couldn't do it this way? Or what do you think might happen if you tried it this way? And have you ever tried it that way? And what happened when you did? So it turns out your great idea may have been something they've tried and absolutely won't work. However, you want to look for those opportunities, because most managers, if you approach them correctly, if you have a great idea, they're going to try it out. And that's a way that you begin to show that you are able to accept that leadership. And so by being a good team member with initiative, that's the first step, I think. Mary, I saw you nodding. Did you want to add anything to that?
I want to add that I'm learning a lot from you, Patsy. I love how you unpack the leadership piece, and I love the value added. That's a great way to set the stage for students to really become leaders. I'll add that we also, in our lab course I'm teaching now, which is a senior lab course, we have 4 large labs, and each one is just an industrial memo. So students have to take data and then make a recommendation for some problem we give them. So it's not a, you know, here, plug this in, measure this resistance kind of thing. And we sometimes give them things they can't achieve so that they learn how to explain it, what their the limitations are. And I have to credit that with Dr. T.C. Scott, who was a professor for me. And he did that on purpose to show us when the models don't match the results, and how do you explain it to your boss, and what recommendations do you make. So I think also we do that. That's a leadership thing, and going, okay, here's what we've got. Did we do this right? Why isn't this working? What is a legitimate path forward? And why should our bosses believe that? And there's a lot of technical communications there. As a matter of fact, at 11, I have a student presentation that's about to do exactly that. So you're right, Patsy. I like how you're doing the leadership, the value added, and telling them how to do that well. And I think we try to do that too in the lab course context of here's an industrial problem.
Okay, Mary, just going again to what you just said. So definitely it is possible from the curriculum to articulate our, from the academic point of view, the way that we approach to a student. So it's possible to officially have in the curriculum courses that definitely support the work that they're going to have in a future experiential experience. I think that probably it is my
Yes,
understanding that at Virginia Tech, there are some specific courses in the curriculum to address this.
yes, this course, and I can't take credit for designing it. I can take credit for taking it over and making a few changes. But this course was designed to be the transition to professional development, or a professional practice, excuse me. So in addition to senior design, this laboratory course, as I mentioned, each of the labs are set up like an industrial problem. They have a memo from their boss. This is the issue. And we, in some cases, we give them some manuals or a little bit of help. You know, some students don't have quite the background in control theory, for example, for one of our experiments. But all of them are set up as an industrial problem. They're to report back in a professional way to their manager, and, you know, with the executive summary, and then understand how to present results. You know, what's a good report, what's useful, what should be in the appendix, what does your boss really need to know. And then also the presentations has a team. So these students work in teams of 5, and we give them guidelines on technical communication. We use Professor Michael Alley at Penn State. He's written quite a few books, and they're excellent sources for technical communication. So we tell them, we're not going to tell you what to put on a slide, but we're going to teach you how to decide what to put on a slide. And it's really about their choices in making a good presentation to their manager, and what are the strategies they can use, rather than say, okay, slide 1, we want to test rigs, slide 2, we want to test results. No, they have to tell the story with the main points. And so that's another leadership professional development piece incorporated in a lab course. Patsy, did you have some additional comments on that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do in the studio is every single one of our studios, we have 6 of them. First off, they have to interact with the customer. Then they have to propose whatever it is they're going to do. And then they have to design, build, test, and present it. And so we go through that cycle. We've gone through that cycle 6 times by the time they're ready to go out on their first practicum. So they've had a lot of experience, and that cycle of being able to talk about what it is that you've done and go through it. And so we live in a small town in Terre Haute, Indiana. It's only about 60,000 people. And so we are lucky in that the local media will come and cover our students' presentations. So these are first quarter freshman students, first year students, and they're making their final presentations, and the local media is there with the cameras on their shoulders, you know, taking pictures while they're talking. And the students are scared to death, and it's a great experience for them because you begin to develop poise when you go through that. And there's one sad story I can tell. There was a group that had made some beautiful toys for kids with disabilities. And they were trying to let students work on gross motor skills. So there were blocks that just had notches in them, and you fit them together, but they were colorful. It was just great. And the night before the presentation, they decided, you know, these would look better if we varnished them. They would be all shiny and look so much better. So the night before the media came in, they varnished them. And what they didn't realize, and what is a lesson they will never forget, is varnish has thickness to it. And once they put that varnish on the pieces, they wouldn't fit together anymore. And so they were like, you know, what are we going to do? And it's like, you know, you just say what happened, and it's okay. You know, you've learned a great lesson. You'll never make this mistake again. Put your best foot forward, and don't show that they don't fit together. Just talk about how they're supposed to fit together, never actually put them together. So it was a great learning experience. And it's also now have this rule that says, do not do anything to your design the night before your formal presentation. Leave it alone.
Okay. Let me just start taking questions from the audience. I got one directly from somebody from the audience. I said that we discussed about design, we discussed about leadership. What about project management? That's, if I do the best of my translation. What about project management? Would you like to add something on that, Mary, for example?
Well, I think that's kind of in the context of our senior design for Virginia Tech, and our that's all teamwork. And so we do give them some guidance on how to operate in a team, and we give them some guidelines on project management in terms of what is that design process. You know, the first part for us is understanding customer needs, and you know, really the different strategies on how to do that. And then the next step might be brainstorming and some strategies on that creative piece. So we give them the guidance of that structure of project management, and they inevitably have to get into some issues with suppliers and, you know, those kind of you know, they're not directly in the design process, but you have to deal with them. So we're giving them a structure, some guidelines, and some teamwork skills. So they are managing a project. That senior design project is indeed the whole process. So Patsy, you might have some comments?
Yeah, so a lot of our designs incorporate software. And so one of the things that's being used a lot in the software community is either Scrum or they also call it Agile. So depending on who you're talking to, it might be called one or the other. But we've actually found that that has improved the quality of all of our projects. And so basically every 2 weeks, the students have to have a prototype of some kind. And so in the beginning, it might just be a paper prototype. But it's amazing when you have that paper prototype and you're showing, okay, so this is what we're going to be doing. Suddenly people are going, oh, no, wait, that's going to violate this constraint. And oh, no, you have the wrong idea. And as time goes along, the quality of the prototype and the nature of the prototype changes, and it gets closer to the final project. But we have found by having a set time for prototypes that has improved the overall quality throughout all of our design studios. And so for the first studio, we typically have prototypes every 2 weeks. Once you get to capstone, it's probably prototypes every 4 weeks. But if you don't do that, some students don't go forward, they don't make progress. So that's something we found out, that's something we started, I'd say, in the last 3 years, and it's working very well for us.
All right, okay. Thank you, Patsy. So let me know, since we are approaching to the end of our panel, and I have one more question from our audience. But before that, just let me try to go back again through the importance of, okay, we already said that it is possible to extend all our assessment, all our evaluation of our student outcomes on the internships or the POPs or our experiential opportunities for our students. But sometimes, for example, in terms of methodologies, we might have barriers in the sense like, okay, this is the way how our faculty approach to a design process. And this might be another methodology that the industry are using to approach to the design process. So from both of you, for both of you, what do you think would be the best way or a possibility to get the faculty engaged in the process and also surpass these barriers in terms of methodologies? Let's say, for example, design. Is a matter to pitch the design to the faculty or just getting them involved from the very beginning of the solution? I would like to know your thoughts on that.
So I guess I will jump in. So I have found that there are some faculty who are excited and interested. And so my suggestion is that the faculty who are excited and interested, you engage them and you reward them. There's some faculty who aren't interested and they may actually work against you. So I would say the faculty that really aren't interested, I try not to force them to do anything. So I guess I try to be more from being encouraging and rewarding those who are interested and helping them succeed, and then trying not to imply anything about the faculty who aren't interested. Because no matter what you do, there are going to be some faculty who aren't interested and they prefer to stay in their area doing their own little thing in their area. And so as much as possible, I let them do that. I don't know what Mary wants to say about that. Mary, what do you want to say?
Well, thank you for saying those things, because that's exactly what I was thinking, is how do I articulate this? And it's a spectrum of faculty, and some are going to be very engaged and open to being engaged with the industry sponsor. Others are going to have kind of a minimal interaction with them that's really just guided by what the course requires. And those faculty may be great on a technical level, but on the project management, maybe that's just not their forte. So I think in just listening to you, Patsy, a couple things came to mind. One is sort of the possibility of having the lead of the senior design have a little more interaction with each of the sponsors, that they can touch back with the faculty and teams if necessary. You know, is there an intermediary that might make us a little stronger connection when the faculty isn't as proactive about meeting with the client? I also wonder if some of the faculty, in my case, do they just need a little more guidance, as you would a student, on some things they might want to consider interacting with the client, maybe encourage them to set up a meeting beforehand to make sure they understand the needs, and just sort of a relationship building. And that may or may not be a good idea. I'm just thinking about it based on the comments we've made. So yeah, I think it depends is the answer. There might be an opportunity for an intermediary, like I said, the person that's running the capstone design. There may be an opportunity there. It just kind of depends really on the personalities.
Okay, Mary. Would you think the whole thing, it will be different? I mean, these conclusions that so far we have been discussing, also hearing during our panel. Do you think the story will be different if, in the case that we have, like, for example, a research internship, for example, Mary, if it's a research-based project, do you think it is possible to do the same?
As long as it's designed. I mean, that's one of the problems that we see. I've seen it as an accreditor. I've seen in my own program. We try to nip it in the bud at Virginia Tech. But, you know, where people think that, oh, I have a team of students, they can just collect data and we can write, you know, do research. And this is design. So we always make sure that it's a design project. Now, the design project can be for a larger research project where they're designing an experiment or some equipment or some other, you know, maybe another opportunity. So I think and I do see it at Virginia Tech, where there is a nice dovetail between research and design for our students. And so I think, to answer your question, yes, I think it's very possible. I think it's important to make sure that the students are getting the design experience, that the outcomes, you know, to get the design outcomes that we're targeting. But I do think there's opportunities, and I think you know, maybe talking to industry a little more about the research potential of any project or future, and you know, maybe there's an opportunity there to actually address that a little bit early on. Patsy?
Okay, I'm curious, can you hear me? If you can hear me,
yes,
through your head, because my face is okay. Cool. My face is frozen on my screen, so I'm sitting very still. One of the things I was going to say, so I agree totally with everything that Mary said, absolutely. But also, if you're looking at the overall ABET outcomes, there are certainly ABET outcomes that can be met with research projects. So you can get information about teaming. Most research projects involve teams. You can also get application of math, science, and engineering to complex problems, because most research projects involve complex problems and they're looking to apply math, science, and engineering. You can also do the experiments. You get a lot of good application of experiments in research projects. And then also the application of new knowledge. You get a lot of that, number 7. So research projects definitely have their place. And to combine research and design typically is when the research project needs to have something designed, and it works out really well, just like Mary says. Like maybe they, in order to do their experiments, they need to have some kind of test fixture design, or they need to have something designed so that an enclosure to hold something so that they can actually take the data that they want to take. So we've seen good design projects, but don't limit it just to design. Research has a lot more to offer.
Yeah, I just want to second that. I absolutely agree, Patsy, that there's a lot of opportunities for assessment in research projects, research studies.
Okay. Well, we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to take a question from the audience, and I will combine it also to provide some final remarks on these great panel discussions that we were having. And the question is, what do you think is going to be the next level in experiential education? And probably I'm just going to add to that question, like, if we do this panel discussion in 4 years, what we will be discussing?
So I hope what we are discussing is students working full-time and companies enabling them to have part of the day off to take the courses that are applicable to the type of work that they're doing. So maybe if you have a student working, doing a co-op for a company and they're working in quality, then you're going to enable them to take the math courses that support design of experiments. Or you're going to be able, we'll have it in a more modular way so we can see, okay, students working at this company, here is the technical information from our university that will help them do better. And there will be more of an ease for them to take those, to learn that material and get credit for that material. So I hope we'll have students working full-time and also having a portion of that full-time work dedicated to taking and learning more actual academic material. What do you want, Mary?
Well, I also thought about the course credit piece. You know, I think that there's an opportunity for students to concurrently get course credit as well as experiential learning and experience. And I look at it also from kind of an apprenticeship. You know, I like that, what you said about the company industry partnership. And can that be strengthened so that it's win-win, that there's, and can you take some case studies that are current, that students are working on, that companies are working on, and bring those into the classroom to help a math course or to help a lab course with, say, the design of experiments that's really going on in a company? So I think more of a two-way street, a real genuine collaboration for course credit, and it's win-win for academics, students, and industry. And thank you, Umberto, for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed this panel.
I like that genius collaboration, also articulation between our curriculums and the experiential opportunities for our students. So probably in 2 years, we will be just discussing specific cases for curricular maps that embeds courses and also internships and co-ops as part of assessment for our the students' outcomes. So thank you very much, Patsy. Thank you very much, Mary. Very great discussion. I'm glad to see you again, and hopefully in the near future, we'll have the chance to have you again here in ACOFI, here in Colombia. Who knows what's going to be the format? Let's see what happens and the final outcome of these events. But again, thank you very much for all your insights and comments on this really, really important topic for us and for the engineering education. Thank you very much.